Welcome to the A-Side
B-Side podcast
with Brooke and Adam. That wasn't bad.
Have you ever thought to yourself, man, I sure would like to make a podcast. I've got so much to say about blank. Well, if you haven't heard about Anchor, you really should. It is the easiest way to make a podcast, and it's absolutely free. All right, I'm going to tell you why it's so easy. Okay, so with Anchor, there's creation tools that allows you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many others. And you can even make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Trust me, I'm so excited about this. You can be too. Download the free Anchor app or go to Anchor FM to get started.
In most of my life, my relationships don't actually last 2 weeks. So this is kind of amazing that Brooke and I are doing the second podcast 2 weeks in a row, and like consistency is not my thing. So this is pretty amazing. And also, it's pretty awesome. I'll be honest. I have actually, I went to dinner tonight, and it is a place that I have friends who work as servers and bartenders. And one of the servers came up to me and she said, I have to apologize. I haven't listened to your podcast yet, but I'm trying to get through this other one. But I saw that and I'm really interested in listening to your podcast. And I was like, holy cow, I should probably finish eating because I have to go home and actually record episode number 2. Yeah. And she's like, oh, you're going to do this all the time? I'm like, well, that's the plan. I mean, I have a lot of plans in my life that don't follow through. I still have that P90X DVD that has not gotten to the third DVD. So I don't think that that's going to follow through. But it's been really, really encouraging and cool that whether it's family members or friends or people that I am just acquainted with through the service industry or media, or it's been really cool how people have responded to the two of us just talking and hopefully doing that on a regular basis. So to me,
I'm sure it doesn't hurt that I have sent you literally something every single day. Do you like this? Do you like this? What about this for the podcast? Do you like this? What about this? Maybe we should put this on the website. Maybe we should have a website. Maybe we should have an Instagram page. What do you think?
And I was like, yes, do all of that. Although there was one moment when I felt like I was in a bad episode of Mad Men, when you're sending me 13 different logos in one day. And I just kept saying, that's nice. I was like, I got divorced because of this. This is not what I'm good at. How do I tell her I like whatever she's doing? And I don't know how to say that. And we finally found one that you liked enough that I didn't respond badly to. So we have a logo now.
Yes. Because it was well, can you just, what do you think? Just give me your opinion. Just tell me what do you like? And you're like, I like them all. I was
they're all really good. And I'm sort of scared if I don't like any of them because you like them kind of, but you also hate them. The first one you made, I was like, yes, that is the stuff. That is the tea. Let's drink that. It's good. And you were like, I don't know. Let's look at 17 more. And I was like, okay.
But would it really be a relationship if I didn't do that to you?
Well, no, it wouldn't. That wouldn't be our relationship. And that's the really interesting thing about any type of relationship. And I am historically super bad at all types of relationships. But the one area that I feel the most functional in is collaboration and art and people coming together in sort of this weird soup of chaos and creating something. And that is kind of where I want to go tonight with my segment.
Okay.
So I'm going to call this is the first of many segments that I will call That Guy from That Show. Because
there are a lot of those.
Exactly. And you've been in a conversation with a friend or sitting at the bar or just talking with anybody anywhere. And you're like, oh, yeah, that guy, he was in that show with the thing. And
usually I'm the one that people are like, hey, Brooke, you know that guy? He was in that show with the girl. And I'm like, oh, you mean such and such?
exactly. Yeah. And I'm that guy on the other side. I love and some people would call them character actors. Some people would call them like the glue that holds everything together. But like, they're not the ones that make $20 million a movie. They're not the ones that are even like headlined. They don't show up on Jimmy Kimmel. They don't get interviewed, but they're the ones that, honestly, without them, media, movies, shows, TV don't happen.
Mm-hmm.
And in the last week, one of my favorite that guy from that shows has kind of made a reemergence on Peacock, which is the brand new streaming service from NBC.
Mm-hmm.
So it came out like maybe a week ago. And because I am addicted to all things media, I immediately subscribed. So it's $4.99.
Expensive?
No, it's like $4.99.
Okay.
$4.99 for premium, and that's without commercials. And then there's another like $9.99 thing where you get like more access to more of their older archives, which NBC has been the network, or had been the network for, I don't know, like 4 decades of comedies. Friends was on there. Like, it was like NBC Thursday night was like the comedy 2-hour block for years and years and years.
Mm-hmm.
And they've got the rights to all those shows. So like, remember when we were binge watching Netflix like 7 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
And we were like, it was like Friends and like Frasier and like 30 Rock. All of that stuff is now on Peacock.
Okay, so I have to ask, because this one's probably controversial. Is the Cosby Show on there?
I have not seen them. I thought Cosby might have been CBS.
No, Cosby was NBC.
Was it NBC? Like, was it Thursday night? I have not looked it up, and that is a really good question, because, and here, this is taking like a left turn that I was not expecting, but one of the most interesting moments in my understanding of sexual health was because of the Cosby Show.
Is that right?
Yes. So when I was in 7th grade, Rudy got her period on the show.
Oh.
And that is the first, and quite frankly, probably the only time I have ever seen a discussion about reproductive health in any way, shape, or form on TV that wasn't based in some religious background. So I understood getting your period because of the Cosby Show.
Wow.
Yeah. And that is literally terrifying as a parent. But that is one of the most vivid memories that I have, because they took a topic that was not discussed in my personal life. It was not discussed in the quote unquote health classes that I had in junior high at a small religious school. And I learned more from that episode. And I learned more from how people reacted in that episode to each other, mm-hmm. that informed me, that I swear to God used when my daughter herself had her period.
But you know, I
went back to the Cosby Show.
But you said something about, as a parent, that's using the Cosby Show as not a good thing. But I've got to say that I feel that the Cosby Show, when it came to topics of all kinds, was above and beyond most TV shows.
Yeah, and when I said that, it wasn't against the Cosby Show. It was more against the fact that I didn't learn that elsewhere.
Gotcha.
You know, like, I had to go to a sitcom to learn about the fact that young ladies, when they transitioned to womanhood, went through this period. And I had no idea. And that was not something I had ever had a conversation with a real person. Mm-hmm. And like, I don't even think I have to this point, really. And that is
until your daughter.
Until my daughter. But even then, I referenced the Cosby Show, and we watched it on YouTube. We watched that part of the episode on YouTube, because that's where I felt comfortable understanding what she was going through, because I had never, and I think that's the biggest issue, is that, like, I was always, when we talked about reproductive health when I was a kid, it was always in health class, and it was always very scientific, and it was always very, you know, like, rubber glove, not human. Mm-hmm. You know, it was very, like, sterile. It wasn't emotional. And the one thing that always struck me about that episode of The Cosby Show is that it was emotional. And it was a family trying to explain something to somebody who was scared at the time, and how that was so much more personal than anything I'd ever experienced in health class.
Yeah.
So that's why when my daughter went through it, that's where I went. And granted, this was before the whole, stain of his personal life went upon the art. And we could do an entire podcast about how do you separate the artist from the art.
Yeah.
And that is way worse than the floor is lava, because there's no safe place to sit. But this was before that, and honestly, it was when I said I don't know how to explain this, I went to the artistic representation that I had seen that made the most sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
So somehow we're going to get back to that guy from that thing. I mean, honestly, I think we could do an entire week of episodes on The Cosby Show and the things that have happened with it and how challenging that is. I mean, even to take a step from that, I mean, this week was Robin Williams' birthday.
Mm-hmm.
This is somebody who spoke so eloquently about depression and about humor and how people see things differently. And he himself was not immune to succumbing to depression.
Yeah.
That's some heavy stuff.
Yeah.
So it sounds like we've got at least 2 more episodes to record at some point.
We've got at least 2 more A-sides.
Yeah. Right. Yes. This isn't all about Adam talking. Just a reminder to Adam. So back to my original train of thought. And my mind is much like, there's all these games now that my son plays that are about this person who's running on top of a car. And then there's all these other like semi trucks, and you have to jump from semi truck to semi truck to just keep going. And it's sort of a free running game. And it's kind of got this aspect of like Mario to it, where you got to like jump over and not get things, but it's always about timing your next jump, but you're never staying on one semi or one train car the entire time. You're constantly jumping from one to one. And that is my brain. So we bring ourselves back to that guy from that thing.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite that guys, and this is how I know it's that guy, because I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce his last name. Like he's never showed up on like Jimmy Kimmel, or I've never heard like somebody say his last name, but I've seen him in a million things. And his name is Timothy Olinsen. So it could be Olinsen, it could be Olinsen. I'm not sure. But he has been in stuff forever. Like all the way back to his first appearance in modern media, goes all the way back to 1992, where he played a bit character on an episode of Seinfeld.
Okay.
He went on to be in Sequest, Married with Children, Diagnosis Murder, which is one of my favorite American murder stories. We'll do an entire thing about that. The George Carlin Show, Days of Our Lives, Strange Luck, Silk Stockings, which, again, that's an entire episode because that taught me a lot about things that also health class didn't teach you about. Mr. and Mrs. Smith, Dark Skies, Starship Troopers, Frasier, Jack and Jill. He was even in Xena Warrior Princess. He was in like 7 episodes of Xena Warrior Princess.
Oh, wow.
He was in NYPD Blue. He was in the movie Swordfish. He has done voice work for Star Wars Rogue Squadron 3. He was in Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. But the first place that most people might remember him from is from the TV series Deadwood, which was starred by Timothy Olyphant. So there were 2 Timothy O's in this, and I feel like that was poor marketing. But he was only in the first, I think, 4 episodes as the Eastern gentleman who came to Deadwood with his wife, who was trying to find his fortune and ends up getting killed. And then his wife's character ends up falling in love with the sheriff, played by Timothy Olyphant.
Ah. Now I know who this guy is, and what I would recognize him from is Psych.
Yes, and that's where we're getting. because that is no, that's okay. It's fair. It's fair to jump the train a little bit because that's, you know, like I use the whole metaphor of jumping from track to track. Psych is where I think most people would recognize him from. Psych is one of my, like, we have those shows that we just rewatch and we rewatch, and Psych will always be that show for me. And Timothy Olinsen as Carlton Lasseter was at first sort of this foil to Sean Spencer, played by James Rodan, as sort of James Rodan is the son of a detective who pretends to be a psychic, but he's actually a detective and he just solves crimes using his detective skills, but claims he's a psychic. And Lasseter is the one who's always like doesn't believe him and is trying to stop him from getting. He kind of plays the bad guy, not really the bad guy, but more the teacher's pet. Like he's like, this isn't real. I'm going to catch you. For any X-Men fans, Lasseter is he is totally Cyclops because he is all about like following the rules and doing the right thing, and we shouldn't ever break any sort of like norms, and you can't have a sense of humor. And also I'm tall and I have a really short haircut. So basically he's the Cyclops of Psych. And he is exceptional in what he does. But he was also in Jericho. I mean, Jericho, which I think is a highly underrated 2-year series that I believe was on CBS with Skeet Ulrich as this post-apocalyptical kind of, so the world gets nuked and he's in a small town in Kansas and they're trying to survive. He played on that. He was on Boston Legal, Without a Trace, Human Target, which also super underrated series. Heck, he was in Voltran. He has been in just about everything, but Psych is probably the thing he's best known for. Psych started in 2006, went all the way to 2014. There have been 2 different movies, the most recent of which just came out like last week with the launch of the new Peacock streaming series, which is like $4.99, totally worth it. I got it right away. You can also get NBC Gold, which gets you Premier League games. So if you're like a really weird nerd who likes sitcoms and soccer, this is your place. So it's like my thing. But before he did the most recent Psych movie, and just after the Psych series ended, he was in arguably my 3rd favorite musical of all time.
Which would be?
Gallivant. For 2 summers, NBC ran this sort of Princess Bride meets like Monty Python musical medieval series called Gallivant. And he played the King Richard, who was in the first season the bad guy, in the second season still kind of a bad guy, but not the complete worst guy. And all of a sudden, I figure out that Timothy Olinsen can sing, and he can sing well, and he is hilarious. This series is arguably on par with any musical that has been written and produced in the last 10 years. I'm not going to put it on Hamilton level, but just about everything under that. Gallivant is brilliant. And nobody knew that Carlton Lasseter from Psych could sing, and he is outstanding.
Wow.
So we've got Psych goes from 2006 to 2014.
Mm-hmm.
Gallivant goes 2015, 2016. And then life happens. In 2017, completely unexpected, Timothy Olinsen has a stroke.
Oh, wow.
Like a severe life-changing stroke. And he didn't tell anybody about it for like a year. I mean, he's not Brad Pitt. He's not, like even James Roday or Dule Hill from, Psych, who are like the stars. And this character actor who's been in hundreds of shows. I mean, he's 88 credits as an actor according to IMDb, but been in tons of things, goes through this life-changing event. Like, and it's a serious enough stroke that he is working on talking as well as he used to, walking as well as he used to. And it changes his entire life. And I, as a fan, completely missed it. I didn't know for about a year and a half.
So
but following,
what made him, so he kind of just dropped off for like a year and a half, and then what made him come back and talk about it?
So he started talking about his recovery on Twitter and Instagram, and sharing about the stuff that he was going through. And it was, I mean, I am not good about sharing my feelings and sharing my vulnerabilities, and I am not a public figure. This is somebody who has been seen by millions of people and who decided to take the opportunity to show his recovery, his process of getting through dealing with a stroke. I mean, one of his first Instagram posts, he says, dealing with a bit of a stroke, a little stroke that happened. And like, it was not a little stroke. It was substantial. But he has this sort of levity and confidence, but also like vulnerability, where you can talk about it in a sort of a silly way. He's a comedian. He's an actor. He knows how to play with words. But after watching him on Instagram and Twitter and seeing his recovery, and he's posting about how this is the first time I'm on a treadmill, or I'm working every day to get through this, or I'm trying to understand that today wasn't a good day, but I'm still got my family around me and they're supporting me and my friends. It's been one of those things that takes somebody from that guy from that show into somebody that you absolutely look up to, and who has, through just sharing their journey, helped you through theirs. And all of this has come to a head within the last week, because, I mean, he is recently, within the last year and a half, had a guest starring role on This Is Us, which is a show that makes people cry, so I don't watch it.
I love it.
I know. I knew you did. But so he's been on there as a recovering stroke victim as well. So this is somebody.
Oh my gosh. I just pieced together that it was him.
Exactly. So this man is not only taking his struggle and his personal journey, but he is doing the most, like, seriously, like, Laurence Olivier would be like, method acting motherfucker, this is awesome. Sorry, Brooke's mom. Because he said, you know what? This is my life. I'm going to find a role that it fits, and I'm going to be as true as I can in that role. And so last night, and I'd been avoiding it for a week, because I have watched every single moment of Psych. I have seen every episode. I've seen the Christmas movie that came out like 2 years ago. And I knew with the launch of Peacock, Peacock.tv, Peacock app, they were launching the new Psych movie. And it is an absolute love letter between a group of people who they've been working together since 2006. I mean, we're talking longer than you and I have been friends. This is a group of people that have been a collaborative artistic enterprise for years. And this entire movie was crafted so every one of their members could be a part of it, including Timothy Olinsen, who's recovering from a stroke. The movie's called Psych 2 Lassie Come Home. And the entire basis of the movie is the character of Lasseter, who has been often just kind of played up as this, like, not quite Nick, from Parks and Rec. Nick Offerman. What was his character name? Ron Swanson. Yes. So not quite Ron Swanson independent-esque, but kind of there as this very independent police officer. And they create this entire backstory that I don't remember had ever really been fleshed out. And Joel McHale shows up because Joel McHale is great.
And he shows up everywhere.
He shows up as in flashbacks as Carlton, Lasseter's dad, who dies unexpectedly.
Oh, wow.
When he's a kid. And I don't remember any of this from the Psych series. I might have missed it. I mean, selective memory. But they create this whole backstory. And now Carlton Lasseter, played by Timothy Olinsen, has had a stroke. And he's in a sort of hospital assisted living facility trying to recover, and he's starting to have visions. And everybody's telling him that those visions are just, aspects of the drugs or this, that, and the other thing. And it's not stuff that he's actually seeing. And this becomes the entire story that Sean Spencer, and I'm messing up real names and like character names, but Sean Spencer is played by James Roday, Dule Hill, and then you've got Maggie Lawson, Gus, yeah. Because Gus always has like 37 nicknames, so it's hard to remember his actual name. Right. Because Sean's always like, Booty McBuckabuttons. And you're like, no, that's not my real name. But, and then Maggie Lawson, who highly underrated. Like, she's in my top 5 underrated actresses of the last 20 years that need to have more success than they've had, because she should be a movie star. She is outstanding. She had this short-lived series about baseball where she became a coach, which was really good, and no one watched but me and my kids. And then we missed a week and it got canceled, so I feel really guilty.
It's all your fault.
It was all my fault. Same with Pigsty and Platypus Man from the UPN in 1997. Still feel guilty about that. I had a basketball game on a Thursday night. And I didn't watch it, and they got canceled the next week, and I scored like 0 points in that basketball game. So really just a loss all around.
It was, a double loss.
Double loss. I was bad at basketball. We were all bad at basketball. You got 5 like really short white kids from a Lutheran school in Minnesota, and we have no subs. Like, we didn't score a basket until our 3rd game in 5th grade. And when we scored a basket, our parents like freaked. Like, they were so excited. And the other parents were like, what's going on? And like all our parents were like, they've never scored before. And we were like, yeah, can we not yell that? Let's not yell that. But they are an amazing group of actors. And the creator of Psych has always been heavily involved in the series. And you can see in this entire about hour and a half movie that is available on Peacock.tv, Peacock app, whatever. We love the group that we've created, and this story is going to include everybody. And I watched it. Well, I don't sleep a lot, so me watching a movie at 3 a.m. is not that weird. But last night at 3 a.m., I finally cracked, and I started it because I wanted to talk about it for this podcast. And I had seen so much of his journey on Instagram and on Twitter. And he also somehow is best friends with my favorite British artist, Frank Turner and the Sleeping Souls, which makes no sense whatsoever, but also totally makes sense. So super jealous of them both, I guess. And so at probably about 4:25 a.m. as the show is ending, they basically recreated a scene that he had talked about on his Instagram and his Twitter, where he wasn't entirely sure that he was going to be able to walk like he used to. But what he always wanted to be able to do was to walk to his wife and to hold her again. And they recreated that scene in the movie. And evidently somebody put sprinklers in my ear ducts, and I just gushed.
Someone was cutting onions in the room with you.
Yeah, with garlic and also reading me the saddest story. Like Old Yeller was playing at the same time,
right?
And somebody was playing Eric Clapton's what was a "See You in Heaven" song about his kid, which is just the worst, horrible song. And then Sarah McLachlan is singing about dogs that need homes. All of that was happening. I was just bawling. But in that moment, I'm like, this is for me as an outsider or somebody that always wanted to be in that world. I mean, I went to college to be an actor. I wanted to be in Hollywood. And so much of Hollywood is seen as this glitz and glamour and red carpets and people making millions, hundreds of millions of dollars and, Xenu and Tom Cruise and who knows what. But to me, the thing that I always wanted from art was that collaboration. And here in this moment when they could have done anything with this movie. I mean, Peacock wanted a movie to premiere at their launch. And they took the time to not only include their friend who has gone through something amazing and horrible and hard, but to make it about that and make it about the entire collaborative effort, both of solving the crime and of making this art. That reminded me why anybody ever wants to be part of art. We do this stuff to connect with people, to share in a moment. And it was really, really beautiful and absolutely worth $4.99 a month. And we're not getting sponsored by Peacock at all.
No, we are not.
We are not.
We wouldn't mind.
We wouldn't mind it at all. I mean, I would love to not pay $4.99 a month. That would really take one item off of my budget. But it was just a really beautiful moment. And knowing the backstory of this is somebody who's been such a part of the industry and who's gone through this incredibly hard thing. And to have his colleagues create a way for him to be part of it and also to celebrate that journey was in a time when there's not a lot of things that make you feel good. And there's not a lot of things that like warm your heart. And I mean, I'm a little bit of a Grinch. It's like 2 sizes too small, but it can still get warm. It was something that I felt like I really needed to talk about today, because it's one thing to know the guy from that thing, and we love those guys, but it's another thing to see this entire story and to see his collaborators find a way to tell that story within art that lifts everybody up. That is exactly what we need right now.
I love it. Kind of a side note, because you did mention James Roday.
Oh, yeah.
James is actually on a show that I started watching this past season, A Million Little Things.
Yes, that's another one that makes you cry, so I don't watch it.
And I feel like you would love his character, because it's such a far cry from Sean on the site, because Sean is fun and fun loving and, you know, cracking jokes all the time. And he's just
basically just a man child.
Right. Whereas his character on this show, he still cracks jokes, but he cracks jokes to kind of hide his pain.
Yeah.
And I really think you would like him. And I think that this cast, if given the opportunity, will have that same connection that he has with his site cast, because they all have such a good chemistry. You just feel their love for each other come through. And
it's a really good cast. I mean, I've seen the trailers and I know that I should probably give it a try. But it's gonna have to be when I can like watch it with somebody who's gonna let me cry. And my dog is not currently at that state.
Because you will cry.
Oh yeah. Well, I cry a lot. Like, and here's the thing that I have always said, and I pretend that I made this up, but I probably stole it from somebody else. As I have told my kids, as I have told people that have gone through stuff in the last, 15 years. When we are too hot, we sweat. When we are too cold, we shiver. And when there is too much, we cry. Whether that is good or bad, when there's too much, we cry. And there's no reason we should be ashamed of sweating, shivering, or crying. They're all involuntary bodily reactions that help us get through.
That's good. I like it.
And I probably stole it with somebody, but I'm going to call it my own for now.
Well, we'll say it's yours. Oh, man. Well, now you make me want to get Peacock so I can see this movie, because I did see it on IMDb. I didn't realize it was a Peacock exclusive.
Yeah, it's Peacock exclusive. And I didn't even mention, like, Corbin Bernsen's in it, like, because he's the dad from Psych. Sarah Chalk from
Roseanne and Scrubs.
Yes, she's in it, playing a nurse, which, kind of spot on. It is so incredibly well done. And it's just one of those things where, like, even if you, like, you'll enjoy it if you know the characters, but even if you've never watched an episode of Psych, within the first 5 minutes, you're going to be like, okay, I know what's going on. I understand this. You're not going to get maybe some of those subtleties, but then again, Psych was never known for subtlety.
Right.
So if you are looking for something to distract yourself and kind of reaffirm your belief in collaboration and people, and for a bigger idea, partnership, it's worth your time.
All right. So it's Psych on Peacock Network, which we are not sponsoring, by the way.
Yes. Psych 2, Lassie Comes Home, Peacock.tv. Not sponsored, but willing to be sponsored.
All right. B-side up next. So you can tell I was in true crime mode the other day when the strangest thing happened to me. So I'm sitting on my couch and I'm watching TV, and I get a FaceTime from who? Adam. Someone who never, ever, ever FaceTimes me. Hello?
This is true. I don't like my own face, but I do love my own face. I just hate FaceTime.
So I'm like, hello, hello, hello. No answer. Hello, hello, hello. Hey, Adam, Adam, Adam. Because I'm thinking, well, if he FaceTime me by accident, surely he'll hear me when I am screaming his name, Adam, and no response. So I'm like, okay, it had to be an accident.
And I mean, let's be honest. I've been waiting for someone to scream my name for a long time.
Oh my gosh. So the phone rings again, and it's another FaceTime from Adam. Hello? Hello, Adam? Are you there? Adam? Okay, now you're starting to worry me. Adam.
And you can't, can you see anything in these FaceTimes?
No, it was completely pitch black. I can hear muffled voices, but I can't hear what's being said. So, hello, Adam? Nothing. So I'm like, okay.
Why are you FaceTiming me? You ruined my show.
I'm like, I don't want to hang up because now I'm thinking, true crime mode kicks in. And I'm like, the crime person in me is like, he's in trouble. Something has happened. Adam, if you're in trouble, let me know. Hit the button, do something, give me a signal. Nothing.
Uh-oh.
I sit there, I wait, and I'm trying to listen, And then
like volumes all the way up to 10, like, can I understand what they're talking about?
I am like,
do they sound like Russians?
Speakerphone. I mean, I'm just trying to do everything I can to hear what is going on in the background. Still not, I'm like, Adam, if you're okay, I need you to say something. You don't say anything. So I'm like, I don't know if I feel really bad about this, but I'm going to hang up. And then I get a message that you are sharing your location with me. Adam is sharing his location with you. And I'm like, what in the world is going on?
Yeah, to be fair, I'm not even sure how to do that.
So I'm texting you. Are you okay? Are you okay? Please, did you mean to send me your location? The first time I laugh it off, like, oh, yeah, you butt dialed me. Then the second time, I'm like a little more concerned. Then you share your location with me. And then I believe there was another FaceTime. So
Probably.
I'm like, okay. I said, Adam, you need to tell me. I text you. Adam, you need to say something to me because now I'm really worried. I'm about to call the police. Before I do that, though, I look at your location. And it lists where you were, and you were at your place of employment. And so I'm like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. This is going to be crazy, but I'm going to call because I'm not going to be able to live with myself if something happened and I could have prevented it because
I could be in like a trunk, like on the way to getting, my feet put in concrete.
Exactly. So I'm like, I have got to do something. I have got to make sure he's okay. So I call your place of business and one of your friends answers the phone, which I didn't know at the time.
Thank God. Of all the people that were working that night, the only person that would handle this appropriately was the one who answered the phone.
So I say to her, hey, this is going to sound crazy. And she's like, yeah, okay. Like she's all in now. First I said can you tell me, is Adam working? And she's like, yeah, he is. I said, okay, this is going to sound crazy. And I explained to her that you FaceTime me, you share your location. And I'm like, I'm thinking he's being kidnapped. And I had to call to make sure he was okay. And she just laughed. And she's like, oh yeah, he's fine. She's like, it was probably just a butt dial because he's working. I think you were making drinks or something. And I'm like, oh, okay.
So I was on the patio and it was like 95 degrees outside. And I've been outside for 3 to 4 hours. And I had just taken my 5-minute break where I texted with Brooke about this specific podcast. And then I put my phone back in my back pocket thinking that'll be fine. And then I had sweated so much that my buttocks decided to dial repeatedly using the touchscreen on my phone.
Through your jeans.
Through my jeans. That's how hot it was. It was like 95 with like 108 degree heat index and like 3,000% humidity. But still, I'm kind of proud of my butt for being able to literally do that many things with my phone without me noticing. And here's the thing. I wear an Apple Watch. So all of those texts and missed calls, I somehow also missed.
Wow.
Yeah. So I did not get kidnapped. I'm not a victim. I just sweat a lot.
And at least I care enough to send the police. all the way to where you are in Minnesota.
Yeah.
In case something
16 hours away. Yeah. I mean, knowing Minnesota cops, I don't think they would have showed up. But actually, no, I'm a white guy. They probably would have showed up.
All right. So last week we talked about Xavier Dupont de Longinus, and it reminded me of another case that if you have an opportunity, you should look up. We may talk about it. It's the case of John List, because they are almost identical. You would think you could just take the name John List off because his case happened first and put in Xavier Dupont de Longinus, and it's identical almost.
I mean, that sounds exhausting to do because John List is way easier to say.
Yeah. Okay, so this week, the idea for this case actually came from my oldest daughter, who's a nurse.
Mm-hmm.
She was telling me a story. Of course, because of HIPAA, she never gives me names. I don't know names. I don't care to know names. I don't know these people. Their names would mean nothing to me. But she never tells me names. But she does tell me stories. And she was telling me about a patient that was in the hospital that she works in that had Munchausen syndrome, Munchausen by proxy. And it got me to thinking about Munchausen cases because they are so interesting. Now, if you don't know what Munchausen is, it's a syndrome. It's classified as a mental disorder that causes a person with a deep-seated need for attention to fake injury or sickness. Most of the time when you hear about it, it's Munchausen syndrome by proxy, which means that they use that need for attention, but they fake an illness. They're a caregiver of some kind, so they fake or cause an illness to whoever is in their care. Usually it's their child. Some famous cases you've probably heard of that are Munchausen by proxy cases. The most famous one you've probably heard of, Hulu actually did a movie based on it. It's Gypsy Rose. Her mother, Dee Dee Blanchard, was diagnosed with Munchausen syndrome by proxy because she for years told her daughter and everyone else that her daughter had all these health issues. She said her daughter couldn't walk, she had to use a wheelchair, she had a feeding tube, and of course the end result, Dee Dee ends up dead by the hand of Gypsy Rose. Usually in a case of Munchausen by proxy, it's the child that ends up dead, and that's what happened in the case we're going to talk about today. It's the case of Lacey Spears and her son Garnett, who was 5 years old. So we start off in Alabama, in Decatur. Lacey got pregnant in 2008. The father of Garnett was a neighbor that she dated briefly. They lived in the same apartment complex, but she told him she didn't want him to be a part of her life. Remember that, because that comes back into play later.
Okay.
So Lacey is a single mom, which complicates things because her son Garnett is sick from birth. From way early on, Lacey started posting on Facebook, and she eventually becomes a blogger. She starts posting about Garnett's health issues. He's in and out of the hospital the first 9 weeks of his life, and doctors diagnose him with failure to thrive, which means they think he's going to die.
Yeah, something is not working on a metabolic level.
Right. So at 9 weeks, he has stomach surgery to prevent him from throwing up food so that he is able to keep food down, so that hopefully he will
put on weight and grow and
start to thrive again.
Right.
So after this surgery, Garnett continues to improve. They think, okay, things are going to get better. Well, at 9 months old, he has another surgery and has a tube inserted, what they call a G tube. The nutrients, he doesn't have to eat because the nutrients go directly into the body, directly into the abdomen. Right. When Garnett was about 1.5 years old, Lacey moves from Alabama to Florida. She moves closer to her grandmother. She's there for a few years. Then she moves again when Garnett gets a little bit older. He's about 3 years old. She moves from Florida to New York. Now, I say this, I point out all these moves because if you look at different cases of Munchausen by proxy, you'll see a lot of times they move a lot because once doctors start to kind of figure out what's going on, they move to another place, and then the cycle continues and they move. If you look at like Dee Dee Blanchard, that's exactly what happened. She lied and told people that all of her medical records were lost in Hurricane Katrina. So this is a common theme in a lot of these cases. So they move from Florida.
Finding a new audience that will be potentially believe you.
Exactly. Yeah. So in about 2012, they moved from Florida to New York, and she tells everyone that she's moving to New York because she wants Garnett to have the best education possible. Garnett still can't consistently eat, still using a tube at 3 years old. Well, in 2013, Garnett is 4 years old, and he sees Dr. Ivan Darenkoff, who is a pediatric gastroenterologist.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Darenkoff notices something is a little off. So he performs a number of really complicated tests to determine what Garnett's issues are. All of the tests come back negative. That's really when that little, in the back
Alarm
of his head,
bells.
something, that alarm bell is starting to ring.
Spider sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So he suggests to Lacey that she get a bunch of nutritional evaluations for Garnett to see if the feeding tube was even necessary.
Yeah.
Well, Lacey didn't disagree, but she wouldn't really agree to get the evaluations done, which more alarm bells, more red flags.
Yeah. Spidey sense going off real bad.
Well, unfortunately, Dr. Darenkoff isn't able to continue to investigate and to continue to see Garnett because he ends up moving to another state for his practice.
Mm-hmm.
And he said in a recent interview, 48 Hours did an interview, and he regrets not following up. He does. He's just moved, got busy with life, and he didn't follow up, and he wishes he had. Well, Garnett seems to start thriving. They moved to a place called The Fellowship in New York. It's an alternative community, and it's geared toward elderly and disabled. Well, she gets a job at The Fellowship. Lacey gets a job there. And Garnett is like thriving because he's in this community and he's just kind of running free and making friends and he's loving life.
Sounds
And
pretty awesome for like a 4 or 5 year old kid.
exactly. Little kids love elderly people. Elderly people love little kids. They kind of give each other a renewed sense for the older people, it's like a renewed sense of life. And for these young kids, it's like, wow, they know everything.
And also, someone's listening to me.
Exactly. So Lacey took this job there where they provide not just paycheck, but they provide free room and board and schooling. So for about a year and a half there, he's 4 when they move in. And for like a year and a half, things just are going great. Just he's loving life. Lacey's doing well. The residents love him. He's a bright spot to them.
Oh, I'm sure.
There's just this boost of energy in at the community. Well, in January of 2014, things start to change. Shortly after he turns 5, he starts to get sick again. He has a fever. He's suffering from headaches, from stomach aches. None of the doctors can figure out what's going on. He just keeps getting sicker and sicker and sicker. So finally, Lacey takes him to one hospital, after doctor after doctor after doctor. Finally, Lacey takes him to one doctor and they admit him to the hospital for observation.
Okay.
Well, once he's in the hospital and constantly being observed,
He starts to get better.
He starts to get better. Well, then he starts to get sick again.
In the hospital?
In the hospital.
Oh.
Yeah. He's admitted to New York's Nyack Hospital, and he's got severe symptoms, the nausea, the headaches. He's screaming in pain from these headaches. He's holding his stomach. He's not keeping things down. This little guy is just in bad shape. They set him up to
the worst day ever.
It's so, as a mom, as I'm researching this, I'm like, when your kid is sick, you would do anything.
Oh, absolutely.
To make it stop. Anything.
Kill a giant, eat a rhinoceros. I don't care. Like anything to make that moment a little bit better.
Yeah. I mean, I would take all of the pain. Give it to me so that my kid is not suffering. Well, apparently that's not Lacey. So poor little Garnett, he's hooked up to a video EEG and they place a special cap on him. They're monitoring his brain activity. They ask Lacey, look, can we put a camera in the room? And she consents because they need to see what is happening.
Yeah,
so there's
something's going on. Something we can't explain.
Exactly. So he is monitored constantly from his brain activities. There's a camera in the room so the nurses can always see what's going on. He seems to improve. Lacey is there. She doesn't leave his side. He starts to improve again.
Good
So
sign.
everybody's excited. Yes. All right. Yay, Garnett. Things are starting to look up.
Yeah. This kid is living as opposed to hurting.
Yeah. And then things kind of bottom out yet again. Tests show that Garnett's sodium level is way too high. Way too high. When he was admitted, his sodium levels were at a normal. Now, this doesn't really mean anything to you or I, but I'm going to give you the numbers.
Yeah.
When he was admitted, his sodium level was a normal 138.
Okay.
When he was at his lowest, they did another test, and it was at a 182, which, like I said, I don't know anything about sodium, but when you go from 138 to 182,
that's a big difference.
That's a huge difference.
Yeah.
And it's so high that it is, in fact, high enough to cause death.
Oh.
So Nyack decides, okay, look, we obviously don't have the resources to help him out. We need to get him to a specialized children's hospital. So they want to send him to Westchester Medical Center.
So they're thinking like this is something we've never seen before.
Yeah, they have no idea what's going on because they're monitoring him. They're
watching all the time.
Yeah, they're not seeing anything that's going wrong. So one of the nurses actually from Nyack calls a doctor over at Westchester. And I got this information from a CBS News article. So the nurse calls over to the doctor and the doctor asks, what is his sodium level? And the nurse says 182. And he says, 182? She says, 182. He said, no, then you need to repeat it, okay? Because that's impossible. The doctor literally said, that's impossible.
That's never a good sign.
Exactly. So that's how you know things are pretty bad.
And like at this point, the hospital is thinking this is a case we've never seen before. There's just something unique about this. This is a medical anomaly. They're not thinking foul play.
No, not at all. They're just trying to figure out what is going on with this.
Because they had the cameras on him the whole time and they didn't.
Right. Yeah. So Garnett is airlifted to Westchester's Maria Ferrari Children's Hospital. They get him into this specialized children's hospital, and his sodium levels, they're able to bring them back down shockingly fast.
Well, that's good.
And it looks like he's going to start to recover, but it doesn't last. Not even 24 hours. It was too late.
Just like make salt like accidentally in his body or what?
Well, here's the thing. They knew there's no way possible that his sodium levels were that way organically.
Naturally that high.
Something was happening.
This sounds
something fishy.
Deathly.
Something not right was happening.
Yeah.
Unfortunately for Garnett, the sodium levels were so high they caused his brain to swell. And 2 days after being admitted to Maria Ferrari Children's Hospital, he was pronounced brain dead and put on life support. Of course, 2 days after that, poor little Garnett was declared dead. So now suspicions are really like, what is happening?
How did this happen?
Just like the doctor said, this is impossible.
Yeah. This is not something that you can do by just eating way too much salty food.
This is not, oops, I dropped the cap on my salt and my food was too salty. And
this isn't I went to like 3 movies at the movie theater and I ate all the popcorn.
Right. This was someone was doing something to him. So, of course, the hospital gets suspicious. Police are called. Doctors tell the police that the only way that the sodium levels could get that high is if someone had given it to him.
So, like, how do you even give salt to, like, I mean, I guess this is where my ignorance is showing, but.
Well, now remember, he was on a tube.
Oh.
He did not leave his side.
Okay.
There's a camera in the room watching.
Yeah.
The only place in the room that there is not a camera is the bathroom.
Oh, boy.
There were several occasions when Lacey was alone in the room with Garnett where he was fine. He went to the bathroom, or she took him to the bathroom, and when he came back, something was wrong.
Aww.
Yeah.
She goes to the bathroom and she's like, drink all this salt.
Well, she just injected it into his tube.
Oh, on his tube.
Yeah.
Oh, geez. So it wasn't even like a conversation. It was just like, hey, look over there. Here's a bunch of salt.
And I'm sure this little 5-year-old boy, his mom is probably saying, here, honey, this is food, or here is your whatever. And he's not going to question her.
No, because he's been taking medication his entire life. This is the only person he trusts because she's shut anybody else out of the life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, of course, an investigation begins. Westchester detective Dan Carfey and Rampano detectives Kirk Budnick and Greg Dunn investigate. Those
are some great cop names.
Don't they sound like, I mean, they had to be cops with those names.
Like literally, like their options were like
TV cop,
criminal defense lawyer, or like real cop. Yeah. Or TV cop. Yeah. Like they maybe could have been like a personal injury attorney, but that was it.
So, of course, the investigation proceeds. They get a search warrant for Lacey's house. Well, in Lacey's apartment, there were feeding bags that were found. Here's the thing. Lacey had called her neighbor. Now, let's go back. Lacey was a blogger. She was a mommy blogger, so she had friends, she had family, she had followers that were always...
Yeah, she was like part of the media community.
Right. They're helping, they're sending money, they're sending donations, they're sending love. Well, one of her neighbors was also one of her friends, and she wanted to be there for Lacey because when you know someone with a sick kid, you're like, what can I do? How can I help you? So Lacey...
Can I be there for food? Can I like do laundry?
Exactly.
Can I, just listen? Like anything you want to do, you want to be there.
Do you want me to clean up your house? What can I do for you? Well, that's what happens here. Lacey calls her neighbor and she talks about these feeding bags that are in the house. And she's like, hey, can you grab these feeding bags and throw them away? And the neighbor was like, I mean, yeah, sure.
It's an oddly specific request.
That's weird, but she just lost her kid. She's grieving. I'm not going to think anything of it. She removed the bags from the apartment, but she didn't throw them away. Smart neighbor. Smart
neighbors. Neighbors are always the ones in these stories. Like neighbors are always the ones who are like, I kind of like you, but you might be the devil.
Right.
So, I'm sorry. Your shutters were shut for 3 days. You probably killed your whole family.
Yeah. So,
I'm scared of my neighbors right now.
So this was like...
Good thing I'm in the basement.
This was a neighbor and a friend that was with her at the fellowship. So they go into Lacey's apartment, and at first they don't find anything. Well, then... And
again, like, the fellowship is more of a communal thing. So, like, you would feel like there's less concern about personal space and that sort of thing, right?
Right. Yeah. So the friend takes the feeding bags, and she holds on to them. Lacey thinks she has thrown them away. She has not. Something still just doesn't sit with her. Right. And she ends up turning the bags over to the police.
Okay. Well, again, neighbors.
Exactly. Well, the bags are sent to a lab, and they're tested, and the lab finds high levels of sodium. If you took it was equivalent to if you took 69 of those table packets of salt and put it and just kept pouring them into the bags. Each bag, they found several. Each bag had that many small salt packets in it.
Holy cow.
Think about like one salt pack. I don't think I even use one whole salt pack most of the time.
I mean, I would use 4 to 5.
Really?
Oh, yeah. I love salt. Like, I will be preserved. I don't even need to be, like, when I die, it's not even going to be, like, put some amaldehyde in that guy. They'll be like, he looks really preserved. Let's just keep him that way.
Just keep giving him salt. He's fine.
Yeah, he's fine. Like, he's either going to turn into a snail or he's going to be fine.
Garnett's death, of course, ruled a homicide due to the high amounts of salt that she was feeding him through his tube to keep him sick.
Just like straight salt.
Just sodium solution in these feed bags. Well, Lacey obviously has a problem because she just needs the attention and she needs the support and the love. Of course, like I mentioned.
She wants a community. She wants to be, the blogger. She wants some attention for being a mom and dealing with the challenges of having a sick kid.
And she wanted to be recognized as a single mom. Now, remember, this is what I said. Hold on to this tidbit because we're going to come back to it. Now,
there was some foreshadowing.
Lacey's or Garnett's dad was a neighbor from her old apartment complex in Alabama. She told him she didn't want anything to do with him, but she lied to him. She lied to everybody else about him. She actually was telling people that Garnett's dad was a member of the sheriff's department in Morgan County. He was a sheriff's deputy in Morgan County, which he in fact was. But she told everybody that he died in a car crash as a hero. And she even made multiple posts about traveling to his memorial service and how much she missed him on the holidays. So she is she needs that constant attention and validation.
She created this entire narrative of this widowed hero's wife, lover,
girlfriend, whatever.
And tragic child who has these medical conditions, all because she wanted attention.
Yeah. Now, Munchausen is an actual disorder.
Why not just start a new Instagram? Because that's way easier and less creepy.
Here's the thing.
Or she could have gotten OnlyFans. Either one.
Oh no. But here's the thing. Blake is an actual person. He is actually with the Morgan County Sheriff's Department.
So this is the dad.
This is the fake dad. Yes.
The fake dad. Okay.
Yeah.
So there was a real guy who died in a car accident.
No. The guy his name is Blake, and he is in fact a real person, but he is alive.
So she didn't even pick someone who had actually died. She just picked a random dude.
Yeah, basically, because he said he'd only met her about 3 times in life. He had no idea why she picked him. They didn't have a relationship. They didn't have a past. They didn't even have a friendship. This was just someone that she randomly picked and then killed off for attention.
I mean, I'm going to call a little bit of shenanigans on that because, that's what every guy would say in this situation. There's probably a little bit more to their relationship than he's letting on.
Well, he's married with a whole other life.
Well, yeah, that didn't stop most people.
You're right, but he's actually not the biological father either.
Right, yeah. Doesn't mean he didn't have some connection to her, though. I feel like there's a little bit more there than Blake.
Can you say that when someone does this to their kid? Can you really say that? I'm not.
I
wouldn't be surprised.
I can say a lot of things.
I would not be surprised if she made it up. If she said, "Hey, this guy's a good dude. He appears to be a good dude. He's a cop. He's got a family. He seems to be a good dad. I'm going to take his person. I'm going to take this person and make him my child's father. But because he's not really my child's father, boom, I'm going to kill him, and I get lots of attention."
Right, but only fictionally kill him.
Right.
Which is weird. She was like, "Oh, this guy's the dad," but then also, he died, but he's still alive right over there, which is probably why she had to move so much.
Well, no, because nobody was really checking into it. Nobody was making that connection. If she's only nobody's making the connection, and when you post that,
who's gonna call a single mom on the carpet being like, "I don't know about your story there, lady." That would be a real dick move,
right? All she's saying is the father of my child, who he died as a hero, and everybody's like, "Oh my gosh, your child's father died, and you've got a sick kid, man."
Yeah. Who's going to be the guy that was like, "I don't know, let's fact check this."
Exactly.
That's probably not going to happen.
And you've got to think this was way back in 2014. You weren't fact checking on Facebook like you do now.
Yeah, no. Back in 2014, I was actually working for companies that were marketing on Facebook. And let me tell you, there was not a lot of fact checking going on.
Exactly. The whole fact checking thing really just started in 2020.
Yeah, and even then, it's kind of iffy now.
So at that time, and that's even, actually, it would have been before that because, Garrett was born 2009. Yeah. So really nobody was fact checking then. And Facebook was a whole different animal then.
Yeah. Oh, well, and we didn't, and I'm speaking for myself here, but it wasn't a thought that we should question people.
Right. Especially a grieving single mom who's got a
who has a hero father that just died and it's a kid. You gotta have a real unique personality to call that person out.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's a lot of people that have that personality because Lex Luthor is not a real person.
Well, apparently this Blake wasn't either. I mean, he was a real person, but you know.
Yeah, but the Blake that she made him up to be wasn't because he's dead.
Right.
And
so the dad
is not dead.
Right. The actual father, his name was Chris. He wanted to be a dad, but Lacey told him, no, I don't want you around. He had no idea until after all of this happened what was going on.
He didn't even know that Garnett was his kid.
He knew, but she shut him out from everything.
Oh, okay. So she was like, yeah, you're not allowed in this. And then she moved a bunch.
Yeah.
Because they were together in Alabama. And then they went by the time she got to New York, that was like 2-3 moves, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So now you've got investigators in New York and Alabama looking into Lacey, and they reveal in 2 years.
She took 2 years?
No. Listen. In 2 years, she sought medical attention from 20 different doctors' offices.
That's a lot of doctors. I haven't seen 20 different doctors in my life.
No,
I'm about to be 40.
Remember what I told you, though. People with Munchausen by proxy, once they feel that their people are catching on to them, then they switch. And then they switch. And if there's not communication between these doctors, or a lot of times what they'll do is they say they lost their records or they can't find them, they misplaced, they've been destroyed, then there's no way to fact check.
Right. And with, I'm sure, the privacy laws, it's not real easy to share information from place to place.
Right. You usually have to sign a waiver. Yes, I will allow you to see my medical files.
And why would she do that?
Exactly. So 5 months after Garnett's death, Lacey was charged by the Westchester District Attorney. Her charges were murder in the 2nd degree and 1st-degree manslaughter. She was held without bail. The belief, like I said, was that she took him into the bathroom and she inserted the sodium through his tube, which I just, as a mom, I just don't understand. Everybody loves attention. If you say you don't like attention of some kind, you might not like to be the center of attention, but everybody likes accolades or, hey, how you doing? Or you're doing a good job, or do you need anything? Everybody likes that kind of attention, but to get it at the sake of your child, and I know it's a mental condition, but Munchausen by proxy is also a form of child abuse because of this. Yeah.
I mean, because you don't get away with doing this by just saying I'm sick. Sorry, psychopaths are sick and they're still guilty.
Yeah. During the investigation, of course, they logged onto her computer and they found that Lacey had researched dangers of high sodium and signs of high sodium. So she was doing this for a while. She wanted to make sure she could cover her tracks. She wanted to know how to get away with it. And she did for a long time. Of course, the verdict at trial was guilty of depraved. This is a really interesting conviction. She was found guilty of depraved indifference, murder of a child. So I was like, what does that mean?
That doesn't like this was and I am not a legal scholar and I have not recently taken classes to understand law as you have, but it sure sounds like she had premeditated motive and opportunity and a plan, which doesn't sound like indifference.
Well, depraved indifference, it's not exactly what you would think it is. It means that you have a complete disregard for the victim. You have no care. You're like, whatever. And that's basically what she did. She had no regard for her child.
She was so focused on what her child's sickness could get her that she didn't care about the consequences.
Yeah. She was sent. Go ahead.
That's weird. It still feels like she premeditatedly murdered the guy, but the law is much more malleable and the differences are very unique than we expect them to be. Mm-hmm. Like we want right and wrong to be a thing, but there are so many different variances that it makes it frustrating. Like every time I've looked at a case, you want right and wrong to be clear.
Black and white.
Yeah.
But it's not.
It's not.
The judge, she was sentenced in April 8th of 2015. She was sentenced to 20 years to life. The judge did acknowledge her mental illness. So when he sentenced her, he said he was showing her more than what she had shown her son, which was mercy.
Right, which is a great grandstand from the judge, but doesn't really mean anything.
Well, it does, because he's saying, look, you had no mercy on your kid. I'm showing you, at least I'm showing you some mercy, because I could sentence you to, 5 life sentences or whatever, but I'm going to show you a little mercy.
Yeah.
But the judge said that one does not have to be a psychologist to realize you suffer from a mental illness, an illness known as Munchausen by proxy. Lacey's going to be eligible for parole in 2034. She's only going to be 46. Think about that. She'll be 46.
She can still have kids.
Yeah, exactly. She's still young enough. When she gets out, she will still be young enough to have more children.
Or to prey on someone elderly, or to find another way to gain attention.
And I should have mentioned that earlier. One of the things about Lacey that a lot of people found very odd when she was younger, before she had kids, that she really only formed friendships with people that had children, and she became extremely attached to those children.
And I mean, that can be seen in a lot of ways. In hindsight, it looks super creepy, but at the moment, maybe it looks like, well, maybe she would be a great babysitter, or maybe she wants to have kids, or maybe she would be a teacher, or someone who cares about children. Like, you could interpret that in a lot of different ways.
Well, in one of the cases, though, one of her friends, that she would watch their son all the time, when they ran into like a church member or something, they were like, oh, you're with Lacey's kid. And she's like, no, this is my kid.
Oh.
So there were signs early on, just nobody caught them.
Yeah. I mean, that's a really weird, like, this is like a monitor SVU type of thing.
Yeah. Now, while, of course, we have mentioned that Lacey was a blogger. And of course, while all of this was going on, she was posting about Garnett's illnesses to social media, and she was asking followers for donations. She was asking for support. She even started a blog devoted to chronicling her search for a cure for her son. She's currently imprisoned at the Bedford Hills Correctional Facility for Women. Like I said, she'll be there until 2034 when she's eligible for parole. That doesn't mean she's going to get out in 2034. That just means she's eligible. So maybe the parole board will say, oh, you're only 46. You're still young enough to have children. We're going to wait until maybe you're 50. And then we know you can't do this again.
Or they'll be like, hey, it's COVID, so would you like to be out tomorrow? Because that's happened.
No, I don't think they're going to let her out.
I sure hope not.
I don't think she's getting out anytime soon. Not when she's 2034. That's another 14 years. They're not letting her out anytime soon.
Yeah, but also, how crazy is it that 2034 is only 14 years? Right.
And think of how young she was. Well, I guess I can't say anything. I was young when I had kids. Never mind. Let's not go there.
I was young when my kids were born too. So, I mean, like, young people can be decent parents and also make mistakes. Like, they're not any different from anybody else.
That's true. I'm just saying that in terms of right now, in 14 years, she'll be 46. So that means she's only 32 right now. And she's been locked up for a few years.
Yeah. Like, so 2014, so that's like 6 years. And so if Garnett was born in 2009, that was 11 years ago. So she was like 21.
Yeah.
Ish.
Yeah.
And I was like 22 when my oldest was born.
I have always found Munchausen by proxy so interesting. There's another story that's pretty famous. It's the notorious night nurse, Beverly Allett. And her case is a little different because, like I said, Munchausen is usually children, but she was a caretaker and she was making her patients sicker for attention.
Right. So she would get more attention.
Mm-hmm.
That's just
because she was miraculously like figuring out what was wrong with them and making them better. And then they would get sick and then she'd make them better.
I mean, I guess I don't understand enough about the human mind, which is clear by having human mind. But this is where we transition into sort of the reaction period, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like my reaction is probably not going to be so scientifically acceptable. But it feels like Munchausen by proxy is a brush that we paint over just some psychopathic like tendencies. Like we give them an excuse because it has a fancy name, but these people are just psychopaths.
They are, but they're psychopaths who only hurt the people in their care. They're not going out hurting other people. It's whoever is in their care.
Yeah. I guess my brain is like, why do we need to have different flavors of psychopath?
Because you have to understand when you want to know how the mind works. You want to know why do people do this. So that's why.
So maybe we can figure out how to help other people that might be experiencing the same thing and not have it repeat themselves.
And you can see the signs of it, before it's too late.
That makes a lot of sense. It just, my gut reaction sometimes is like, why do we got to give them a special name when they're just evil?
True, they are evil, but if you want to stop this from happening, you have to know the signs.
we just used evil as a blanket term for like everything for like thousands of years, and that didn't work. So this is probably better.
So there you have it, the case of Lacey Spears and sweet little Garnett. Of course, have pictures of Lacey and Garnett posted on our Instagram page, along with Timothy Odmanson.
I don't even know how to say it. That's why he's that guy from The Thing, because we don't know how to pronounce his name.
So you can check that out on our Instagram page and also our website, which is asidebsidepodcast.com. And if you're listening on Apple, don't forget to give us 5 stars.
Yeah, that would be great. I mean, I would even take 4 at this point.
Not me. I want 5. Give me 5, all the way 5.
Brooke's always going for 5, but I'll take a attaboy every once in a while.
All right. Well, it's been another episode of A Side, B Side. Do you have anything you want to say?
Only that I need your reaction to my. You didn't do that.
I did not do that. Okay. Like I said earlier, what I know him from most was Psych, until you mentioned This Is Us, and then it totally clicked, because he is not recognizable as the same person until you started telling me his story. And his character on that show, you're like, oh, what is wrong with you? You're a jerk. But then you get to know him and his story, and like you said, he is surviving, or he is a stroke survivor, and he is recovering, and one of the main characters, Kate, developed this friendship, and they are neighbors, and they go for walks every day, and he's like helping her with her son while her and her I don't want to give away too many spoilers on the show, but he grows on you in this role, and to know that it's mirroring such a part of his real life is just like,
and like, you've watched both shows. Did you ever make the connection it was the same guy?
Not until just now when you were talking about him. Because he was unrecognized. He does not look like Lasseter from Psych.
No, he's got a big beard, and he's like
balding.
It's a different, balding. Like, it's like a whole different look, but he's
even put on some weight. Like when you see him on
Psych, when you can't walk that much.
Well, yeah, but he looks tall, and he's almost like tall and lanky. Whereas when you see him on This Is Us, he almost looks even shorter.
Yeah, I mean, I think that in and of itself is the beauty of that guy from that show.
Yeah,
is that like they can add something to everything you do or everything they do, and sometimes you don't even realize it.
Yeah. Well, that guy from that show. I can't wait for the next one.
Yeah, but there'll be more. Next week's going to be music, though. Okay. I got a whole thing on music. We're doing music next week.
Next week's music. All right. It's been another episode of A Side, B Side podcast. See ya. Thanks.